Oh, hi, Olympia.
Surprise!
Surprise! Today, we're going to talk about the April 8th, 2025 Olympia City Council meeting. We had a full house and a pretty monumental moment.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. All right.
Well, this is Council in 10.
For the record, I'm Kelly Purse-Brassett.
And I'm Susan Grisham. So we started with roll call. All council members were present. Councilmember Vanderpool was on Zoom. And then we moved into announcements. We had a couple for this meeting. Yep. Our Building Decarbonization Program Manager, Dominic Jones, shared information regarding the Energized Thurston Heat Pump and Electric Water Heater Program, which provides access to rebates, customer support, and all kinds of support for the installation of heat pump, heating and cooling systems, and heat pump water heaters. So that was a program that actually was just Olympia, I believe, last year.
Energized, yeah.
And now it is expanded to all of Thurston County.
Regionalized, baby.
Yeah. The more the merrier.
More the merrier, more the cooler, too.
Indeed. So if you were interested in that program, you could go to Energized Thurston and explore how to participate.
Yeah, and they want you. Join up.
Yeah.
All right.
And then Mayor Payne shared that before the meeting, he presented a mayoral proclamation to Shelley Willis, who is the Executive Director of the Family Education and Support Services Center. And it was a proclamation to declare April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. So if you're around town, especially around the Capitol campus, you'll see all those pinwheels, and that's in a commemoration of that month.
Right. And she was joined by Jill Severn, who is, she was a writer for the Olympian. She's a local writer and also involved in the organization. And so it was nice, good to see them.
Yeah. And then we moved on to the approval of the agenda. And before it went forward for approval, Mayor Payne noted that item 6B, which is approval of an ordinance amending Olympia Municipal Code related to rental housing to address income to rent ratio screening practices. That is a mouthful.
It is.
And we've postponed that item till after the legislative session, because this session there are a bunch of rental protections that are going before the legislature, and we don't want to consider this ordinance until after, because there might be some things that are passed that will help us in our rental protection work.
Right. We don't want to get ahead of the state when they can do some of the lifting.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then we went into special recognition, and we had two special recognitions. First up was a recognition of April as Earth Month. We do this every year. And Dave Setterberg joined us remotely. He is with Earthbound Productions, but he was not here, and he wasn't wearing his Earthbound Production hat at the time. But Dave and his organization, even if it's just him by himself, is responsible for all the Earth flags hanging all over downtown. You'll see them. They'll be up all of April, as we mentioned, the city declares Earth Month every year. In fact, the procession of the species was created to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Earth Day in 1995. So remember to take care of our beautiful big blue marble we're all spinning on. And then the next special recognition was a proclamation declaring Fair Housing Month. And we had a couple of folks in person here. Adria Buchanan, who is the executive director of the Fair Housing Center of Washington, came and spoke about their work helping hold people's feet to the fire around the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act was passed a week after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and we know that fair housing was one of the issues of the civil rights movement. It prohibits discrimination in housing for all kinds of reasons: race, sex, disability, veteran status, etc., because everybody deserves to have housing and a roof over their heads. So she was joined in accepting the proclamation by Christina Daniels from the Thurston County Realtors Association. I think she is their government affairs person. And also Mark Kitabayashi, who is the board president. He's also the person who trains all the realtors around the state on fair housing practices. And he talked about how that organization has sort of evolved and continues its evolution. Established in 1908, he mentioned that its code of ethics from 1908 through 1968 was that property values is more important than fair treatment of people in housing. And so they've been working to change that DNA of their organization. And Audria talked about the Fair Housing Center of Washington's work, and she mentioned this really moving story of her work with an 80-year-old woman who was living in a house that wasn't built to code, and as a result, had a week to leave and find new housing. And the center is working to find a space for this woman to with a roof over her head. So, doing good work, but also under threat right now because the federal government and DOJ are working on taking their funding. So it's kind of heartbreaking, but also really important work that they're doing. And so I'm glad the city's acknowledging that.
Absolutely.
And we moved into public comment then. We had about 6 people, all in person. There was no one in remote. And one of our speakers was there to thank the city for extending the sanctuary city status to LGBTQIA to S+ community. They talked about how they had been before council, had no hope that they would actually do it, and was actually surprised that the council did it.
Yeah.
And then the other speakers were all spoke around the upcoming, at that point, sale of 900 Plum Street to the Squaxin Island Tribe, and their comments ranged from comments around the court and what the future of the municipal court to the future use of the property once it's sold.
Yeah.
So.
And then we moved on to the consent calendar, which was passed.
Yes.
And then to the main item of the show.
The monumental piece.
Yeah. So this was consideration of approving a resolution authorizing the sale of city-owned real property at 900 Plum Street to Island Enterprises, a wholly owned enterprise of the Squaxin Island Tribe, a federally recognized Indian tribe.
Basically, its business arm. Yeah.
Yeah. So City Manager Jay Burney shared background on the city's tribal accord, which is an agreement with the tribe that commits the city and the tribe working together on economic and infrastructure opportunities, addressing climate change, and promoting cultural exchange through public art and community service. And we renewed that accord in 2023. And this is really an extension of that work. So the accord really underscores the mutual dedication to fostering economic development, highlighting our commitment to pursuing joint opportunities that benefit the entire community. So in March, the city received an offer from Island Enterprises to purchase the city-owned property located at 900 Plum Street. And we know that that is a 10.7-acre site, and it was built in 1966 and was Olympia City Hall through 2011. And then it was repurposed as the Lee Crichton Justice Center, where our court services are held. And so it's our municipal court and court-related services. But then also on that site is the Yashiro Japanese Garden, our Plum Street Tiny Home Village. We have some evidence storage, and it's our Saturday waste drop-off site.
Yes.
And what we have learned quite some time ago is that the facility that the court is in right now is really at the end of its life.
Right.
So this is actually really well-timed to transition that land over to the tribe.
Used to be the home of our municipal jail, but the condition of the building actually prompted us closing it Jay made a point of recognizing the work of Mike Reed, our former economic director, who's now gone to the port. We still like you, Mike. You're still our friend. We miss
Part
you.
of the family.
And David Burnett, who's the CEO of Island Enterprise, for their work, the heavy lifting of negotiating this agreement. And because it is pretty big, and then the tribal chairman Chris Peters, he spoke to how monumental this was, how excited they were to be part of the community and do something for the community. David Burnett talked about how the tribe and Island Enterprises has been really had their pulse on what the community needs because they've worked with our tourism. They've been part of our tourism groups and those conversations. And what we need is meeting spaces and hotel spaces and nice restaurants, things like that. And I think that's going to be the direction they're going to go. And the Chairman Peters at the podium actually said, for those who are concerned, there's not going to be a casino. So, there you go. Very exciting. More to come. There's a lot of transition for the city. Some sadness for a property that's been, our city hall at one point. So, we've got a lot of heart attached to it too. But I think it's going to be very meaningful for the community in the long run.
Absolutely. And there is going to be a thoughtful transition of all the services that occur and being mindful of staff and beloved places like the Yashiro Garden.
Absolutely.
Making sure that those places have and folks have places to land and to thrive. So,
and as part of the agreement, we have 18 months full use of the facility to support that, and both that time and the proceeds will give us the resources and the space and the grace to move everything in a thoughtful, intentional, kind way.
Yeah, all the while strengthening our relationship with the tribe. So really exciting stuff.
Bringing something wonderful to the community.
So the council did pass that resolution. So and off we go.
Off we go.
And then we moved on to reports. And council members reported, as usual, on meetings and events attended. Mayor Payne reported that he attended a state right-of-way funding meeting with the governor's office and other jurisdictions to talk about continued funding for the right-of-way project, which is a project that Olympia has been doing for a couple of years now.
Right. And been a lead in the state on doing it, transforming, the right-of-ways where a lot of visible homelessness has been able to move a lot of people to shelter. Yeah.
And then the mayor also shared an update on the reparations process through the legislature. So this is related to reparations for African American community members. And that is something that originally was going to be a bill, and then it moved to be a budget proviso. It looks like right now there's about $300,000 or so to study the subject of reparations for the state. So we'll see what happens towards the end of legislative session, whether that moves forward.
Right. And I think the city manager in his report said he was going to be sending some details on some of our data around our work on the right-of-ways to the governor's office as they study that issue.
And then council had an executive session. So at 7:28, they adjourned into that executive session. They were to meet for no longer than 90 minutes. And then they ended the meeting. So boom.
There we go. All right. So we've just entered exciting times with this cell. We'll probably be hearing more about it as we as it moves forward, and we'll certainly be communicating with the community about what happens to all those things that are so beloved, and where they land and how they land. So more to come with that. So. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching us live, you can stay tuned for the full, wonderful a momentous replay of the meeting that just happened, or you can watch it and anything else we have on our programming on demand anytime on oletv3.com. And as you know, I always want you to download the app, the Ole TV app, because it is just that good.
It is. And if you want to come watch a council meeting here live and in person and hang out with us, we're here most Tuesdays at 6 p.m.
We'll save a seat for you.
And with that,
we're adjourned.